Hi, welcome back to my podcast. My name is Shobbs and I'm the host of Shobbs Health and Awareness Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on this platform. And if you are new here, thank you for joining me. So today I am going to be talking on sexually transmitted infection, sexually transmitted disease. And why am I doing this podcast? It's going to be a series because I promise I'm going to publish a series on sexual education, which we are going to be discussing about different topics. So I won't be doing this alone. I have a special guest on the show who is going to be talking about this topic. So I have Nurse Akpan with me on the show. And who is Nurse Akpan? Nurse Akpan is a registered and a certified nurse who is passionate about elder reorientation as the key to a better and more productive life, with special emphasis on sexual and reproductive health. He currently works in a public and community setting with one of the Nigerian biggest HIV implementation partner, JPIGO Nigeria. He loves to give back to individual and society, hence he loves volunteering in diverse organizations. Thank you so much, Nurse Akpan, for joining me on this platform today. Thank you for honoring my invite because that's so important. So, Nurse Akpan, let's just go straight to today's topic. Can you tell us the difference between what exactly is sexually transmitted infection and sexually transmitted disease, and what is the difference between both?
Okay, thank you very much. I hope everyone is hearing me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Sunday. Thank you for having me on board this Zoom meeting. Like you said, STD is sexually transmitted disease is actually something that affects almost everyone. And like I keep telling people, sex is actually one of human beings' fundamental needs. So almost everyone at one point or the other at different frequency engage in sex. So if there is any disorder as associated with sex, it's actually expected that it should be one of the most prevalent or highly frequently occurring diseases. Now, to the post you mentioned, it's all about an experience I had with someone. I was just discussing with someone and it's like, leave that thing. I've been having sex so many times. Do I look like somebody that has sexually transmitted disease? It's not showing I don't have no discharge and the rest of the things, saying a whole lot of things. So that was when I tried to tell the person that you might be having sex, you don't show any symptom, but you might actually have a sexually transmitted disease. And this is how it happens. Every sexually transmitted disease starts like a sexually transmitted infection. So that was why I was saying that there's a difference between STD and STI. STI being the infection, STD being the disease. And what really makes the difference is the fact that when it gets to STD level, there's manifestation of symptoms. That is basically the most profound differences. So everybody that comes and gets in contact with a pathogen through the sexual means has the sexual infection. And as pertaining different kinds of diseases, the incubation period might take some weeks, some days, some months, some even years. So you might be going around and I don't have STD, but you're going around with the infection. And the funny thing is that even when you're going around with the infection, you can still give it to the next person. You can still transmit it to someone. So that is profoundly the most important difference. But what we need to know is that aside from sexually transmitted disease, it's not all diseases that starts like infection. But when it comes to the sexual aspect of transmitting disease, all sexually transmitted disease starts like a sexually transmitted infection. But funny enough, it's not all sexually transmitted infection that gets to become a sexually transmitted disease. Example is human papilloma virus. It might not get to the disease level. It might stop at infection. Your body has a way of walking around it and clearing it off without it manifesting any signs and symptoms. That is why so many people might be walking around with the virus. They're infected with the virus, but they don't manifest any disease.
So what are the symptoms of sexually transmitted infection?
Like I said, sexually transmitted infections are infections, as their name implies. It's only when they manifest symptoms that when they get to STD. That is where routine checkup comes to play. Like my boss says, I work in an HIV program. So many people walk into the clinic on a very good day with a very clear mindset. You see such people, you see them on the road and tell them you have HIV, they might fight you. No symptom, nothing to show for, but they walk. Maybe they came in for malaria, for example. They walk into the hospital for malaria. And because it's a routine check for everybody that walks into an outpatient department, they have to undergo the HIV test, and boom, there's the HIV virus. So that's how it works. So it's routine check that brings to play the fact if you are actually carrying a sexually transmitted infection.
All right. So what are the routine checkup that we have to do?
It differs with each infection, or let's say each disease. Some of these routine checkup have not been made as simple as what we have around, like HIV, in which anybody can pick a test kit, in which the test kits are readily available. So what you have to do is for you to visit a health facility, because like I keep saying, in each and every one of us know the kind of lifestyle, sexual lifestyle we possess or we live. So you walk into a health facility, most of these viruses or bacteria, as the case may be, can be traced from the blood. And you tell them you're coming in that the first you want to do is you want to check if you have any sexually transmitted disease. They're in the lab, they know what to do to ensure you have. But for other ones that are readily available, things like when it comes to HIV, you ensure your routine HIV check, human papilloma, especially as it pertains to now have a screening for cervical cancer, in which you can walk into a facility, then you can be screened for cervical cancer using pap smear or VIA, as the case may be. The two I mentioned are the readily available checkup that we have.
All right, thank you so much for that, Nurse Akpan. We have different types of sexually transmitted diseases. Can you mention some of them?
Okay, for the common ones, we have gonorrhea, we have syphilis, we have chlamydia, we have the HPV, human papilloma virus, we have the herpes virus, possibly the genital herpes. The herpes simplex virus, we have the genital herpes. We have, aside from the genital herpes, you might have something like, there's this one that is now, I heard there's an outbreak in the US, dunovanosis. It's not a really popular virus, but there is an outbreak, dunovanosis. They call it beefy ulcer, because the manifestation is like an ulcer that eats into the genital area. Those are just a few examples
of the types of STD that we have. Thank you so much for that. All right, so can you talk on the gonorrhea? We have others, but I just want you to talk about gonorrhea and genital warts.
Talking about the gonorrhea, a very, very common sexually transmitted infection, very much manifested by the symptom of having painful urination. That's the most very common manifestation of gonorrhea, the painful urination. And in as much as it affects both male and female, but the symptoms is actually always more profound with the male than the female. And the funny thing about gonorrhea is that it can stay inside your body for quite a long time and intermittently bring out the symptoms. You might not treat it and the symptoms will disappear, but that doesn't mean that the virus in totality has gone away. The virus is still there, and it does so much damages, especially to women. When you get pregnant in pregnancy, affects the mother and especially affects the fetus. It has even been implicated in some miscarriages. So that is one thing about the gonorrhea. For the genital wart, it comes from one of the subspecies of the human papilloma virus. One of the subspecies of the human papilloma virus. While one species goes across to cause cancer, one species goes across to cause genital wart. Like the name implies, genital warts is just the presence of warts in the genitals. And most times, the good thing about it is that it can be managed. We have creams, we have drugs that you can use on such things, and they do.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, so now let's move into the preventive aspect. How can we prevent ourselves from having STD?
Okay, I'll bring in the most basic, the one we use with HIV prevention. We'll bring in ABC of HIV prevention. So I just want to call it ABC of preventing sexually transmitted disease. First is abstinence. I usually say, if you don't have business with sex, please stay away from sex. If you know you don't have business with it, it's left for you to decide if you have business with it.
For those that are not sexually active, what prevention means?
Being faithful to a mutually faithful partner is very, very important. Being faithful, not just being faithful, being faithful to a mutually faithful partner is very important.
All right, you can go ahead with the prevention. You mentioned A, which is the abstinence.
Abstinence. Then the second one is for you to be faithful to a mutually faithful partner. That's one way of preventing, because the more partner you have, the more risk you stand of having a sexually transmitted infection. Then thirdly is correct and consistent condom use, with emphasis on the 2 C's, correct and consistent. Some people are consistent but not using it correctly. Some people use it correctly but don't use it consistently. Then routine checkup is also one of the preventive measures. Most of these sexually transmitted diseases are curable. The earlier, the better. Before they do so much damages. And the one I love to put in it will be like knowledge. Ignorance is not an excuse. You will not say you did not know, but when you have the disease and it does what it does, you cannot have an excuse. So you seek knowledge as it pertains to these things, because the more you know, the more it will affect the kind of lifestyle you live and what you do.
Thank you so much for that, Nurse Akpan. Please, a question. Is it possible they get STI from open mouth kissing?
Open mouth kissing, yes, it might be possible. Okay, while I say you can get STI from kissing, is because there are some STI that manifest like sores, like herpes simplex. Okay. Sometimes it comes as cold sores on the mouth. So if I kiss someone with herpes simplex, that's the cold sores on the mouth. Maybe at that stage the person was having cold sores on the mouth, and somehow down the line I have oral sex or maybe perform oral sex on someone else, it becomes genital herpes. Okay. Simply as that. Saliva from the mouth gets into the genital area, it becomes something more. So that is actually the major way in which kissing leads to transmission. Because the same mouth you use to kiss and so many things are actually the mouth you use for perform so many oral sex practices. So now, like I said, the advice to give as it pertains to people who kiss, in essence, it's quite for you to have very good observation skills. Even aside from sexually transmitted disease, there are other diseases that happen in the mouth that we know about natural flora, that if a particular bacteria or microorganism changes the location, it might become a problem. Not that the microorganism is a problem, but because of the change of location. So you have to be very observant when you're kissing or when you are involving yourself with kissing. You see sores, you avoid it. Because sometimes also via kissing, it becomes, because when there are sores in the mouth, these are the breaking the mucosa, which is like the most natural of barriers we have. So even other viruses find it easy to get into the system from all those small things like wounds and sores in the mouth. So it's for you to be very quite observant and also ensure that, I wouldn't want to say rinse your mouth. But when you suspect that maybe you involved in kissing with someone and maybe from the process you observe that there was sore, you might need to take a break away from oral sex so that you don't pass from the mouth down to the genital area.
I think the best advice is that everybody should ensure that they do routine checkup, and so they can know their status. Who are the people at risk of having STI or STD?
Okay, let me just touch the last contribution you did. Okay. If people are staying together, even if it's husband and wife, and as a wife, as a husband, you notice that with your significant other that there's something wrong, maybe sores and all over. It's not out of place for you to tell the person to hold on and do a checkup. It might not even be an STD, but like I keep saying, most of the things that happen here, like thrush, let's say oral thrush, these are things that those microorganisms should not change location. And the genital area is one of the very delicate locations we have in our body. So it's not out of place for you to tell someone or tell your significant other or your spouse to hold on a bit. For the people who are at risk of sexually transmitted infection and diseases, there are people that have some unhealthy sexual lifestyle. Those are the very first set of people. The second set of people are people who are immunocompromised, immunosuppressed. If you have, for any reasons, HIV patients, people who are undergoing cancer therapy, because sometimes cancer therapy suppresses your immune system. Those are the people. We have orphan and vulnerable children, because of the fact that they have little or no say as it pertains to some sexual decision that might be done on them by virtue of some social benefits that they may get in return. So we have sex workers, we have sex workers, we have men who have sex with men. Okay. We have men who have sex with men. Those are just mainly some of the subgroups of people who are very much prone to having sexual transmitted infection.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Nurse Akpan. Okay, so is STI curable?
Yes, some are not. Why I said that is that it's just like STDs varies, and they're just like all diseases. There are some diseases that are curable. There are some that cannot be cured. Some can only be managed. Treatment can be given to allay the symptom, prophylaxis, and a whole lot of things. So STDs like HIV, HPV, they cannot be cured. They are mostly viral diseases. We are still looking for a way to manage HIV now. The same thing with HPV, even though there's been development of vaccine to that effect. But if you actually contact it, your body might just work on it and it disappears, but it still hangs around. But the truth is, if you still have a top-notch immune system, it might not come out to manifest as a disease. It might still stay there. It might not even still appear in your blood again. Just like HIV, you take your drugs, adherence, we have what we call U equals to U, in which the virus becomes undetectable. You cannot transmit it to someone. So that person might walk into a clinic and does HIV test and is negative, but the person is still on drugs and the virus is still there.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So what are the vaccines that people can take to prevent STD?
Every vaccine is dependent. Every STD is dependent on the vaccine.
Yeah.
I think we have a vaccine for the HPV.
Yes.
It's quite expensive. It's quite expensive here in Nigeria.
Okay.
But it's available for children and virgins, people who have not yet had sexual contact.
Okay.
And not yet had sexual contact with people, even though for HIV and some other diseases, they've not yet developed vaccine. But I think the most important one is hepatitis. Yes, hepatitis has a vaccine.
Yeah.
Hepatitis 2 has a vaccine. So those are basically the two big vaccines for the well-known STDs.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that, Nurse Akpan. I think that's all for my question. But I don't know if you have contribution, you have more things to discuss. If you want to give us scenario examples of you treating or advising someone that has STI. And I think I'm also going to involve other people. I want to allow other people to also share their experience or to contribute to what we are talking about. So, Nurse Akpan, do you have more thing that you want to share with us?
Okay, I want to share an experience I had.
Okay.
That should be last year.
Okay.
While I was working in an occupational setting somewhere in Port Harcourt, there is someone that used to supply food to where I work. So once he walked in and saw me and was complaining that he's been having gonorrhea. He treats it, but it keeps coming. And I think this is also one issue that people need to take cognizance of when it comes to STD. STD means sexually transmitted disease. It did not come from the moon. It came from someone. So most times people go out of their way to treat themselves and go back to get that same disease from their partner. I don't want to bring in someone else. I want to bring in partner. So that was what was happening with that guy. He was running in a cycle. He treats himself, go back, get it from his partner, go back for treatment, go back, get it from his partner, go back for treatment. And I told him, if you don't treat your partner, it will still happen, or change your partner. Thank God they weren't married. Those are the only two things you can do. Treat her too or change her. If not, you always keep going in this cycle. And it's worse because the more you keep taking this antibiotic, you might develop resistance to it. You might not even be able to help yourself again. So next time you're going to treat yourself, walk into the hospital, bring her along with you so that you can cut it off. So you treat yourself and you treat your partner, and that is one of the easiest way to sort yourself out so that you don't keep going round in this cycle.
Thank you so much. If you have any contribution or you have something to add to what we are discussing, please feel free to unmute yourself.
I really enjoyed this session with Nurse Akpan. And I also want to thank Nurse Shobola for this initiative. It's a great one. Yeah, I don't have contribution. It's just like a question I want to ask.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I can.
Okay. The question is the aspect of instruments now, like blades and other kind of metal instruments.
Okay.
Can it contribute to contacting STD? or STD.
Okay.
Sharing of plates, sharing of syrup.
I think I get a question.
Yes, I got a question, but I can't hear anything anymore. Okay, thank you so much, Faith.
I said
question.
Okay, I get your question. I hope I'm correct. You're saying in the aspect of sharing objects, most likely metallic objects, if it enhances sexually transmitted infection. Sexually transmitted infection, as the name implies, we're talking about only infections transmitted sexually. That doesn't rule out the fact that you can have this, but not via sex. I hope everybody understands what I'm saying. HIV, for example, it's sexually transmitted, but you can have it through other means, like sharing Shobbs, sharing metallic objects that there are blood and stuff. So some of these diseases can be gotten via other means, like sharing of this Shobbs. Some of these diseases are blood-borne too, not just only, semen-borne or vaginal fluid-borne. They are also blood-borne. So any way blood moves from one person to the other, that was where I was saying something about kissing. There is a wound in the mouth and you are kissing and blood exchanges, it goes. Because this virus also, in as much as it's present in the vaginal fluid, present in the semen, it's also present in the blood. So we still have some sexually transmitted disease that are passed through instruments. But if someone gets it from instruments per se, we can't say that person had a sexually transmitted disease. We might say this person, let's say for example, we might say someone has HIV, but it was, let's say, transmitted via sharing sharp object, transmitted via maybe clipper, and other stuff. Okay, please. And before someone says something, there is something that just came to my mind I would love to add. Okay. There is this thing about toilet infection. And because I know in one of my LinkedIn posts, I think it's the one you're quoting, someone asks about toilet infection. Okay. There's this thing about toilet infection. And some people say it doesn't exist. Some people say there's nothing like toilet infection. And growing up in Nigeria, we hear people selling drugs on the roadside and they'll be like toilet infection and everything. But I would love to say that I think it's just a misinterpretation of some stuff. Most of the things people call toilet infection are sexually transmitted disease. Those symptoms they manifest are sexually transmitted disease. But like I keep telling people, that doesn't mean that there's nothing like toilet infection. There are still diseases that can be passed via toilets. After all, there are diseases that pass through fecal matter. And where do we have the most of fecal matter? Toilet. Shigella, Escherichia E. coli, someone can just go defecate, and if you're not conscious, if you don't have proper toilet hygiene, you might just place your hand, pick it, and you get it. Yeah. So if you want to trace the pathway of that infection, you'll be like, where do you get it? It's actually the truth for someone to say, I got it from the toilet. It's true, because he places and they pick the bacteria, they maybe put it in his food, put it in his water, and that's all. But that thing people call toilet infection, that toilet infection, it's actually what actually differentiates one disease from the other is also to look at the signs and symptoms. When they give the signs and symptoms, it's always most likely sexually transmitted infection.
Any more questions?
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, sorry I came late, but at least I've gotten some few points from what Nurse Akwaowo just said, and I want to ask a question.
Okay.
Okay, Nurse Akwaowo, please, if I can recall, you said STD can be transferred through metallic objects as well.
Yes, I said something like that.
Okay, please just expatiate more. What type of metallic object are we talking about? And how can we get STD aside from HIV from a metallic object? Okay.
What I said in essence is that these diseases, you can HIV. Okay, let's take. You said I shouldn't talk of HIV. Hepatitis, for example. Hepatitis is a blood-borne virus. So, in as much as it's also present in the vaginal fluid and the semen, it is also present in the blood. So that means anything that makes that a person who has hepatitis blood to pass into your blood, whether it is through razor blade, needle, scissors, any metallic object. Maybe, for example, let's say, as a lady you are, let's say you go to a salon, and maybe while you're doing your weave on, the person before you had hepatitis and is being pricked by the needle, and maybe there is a blood and they use that same one and prick you. You can have hepatitis. But that doesn't mean that all these, that's what I was trying to say, that in as much as we call these diseases sexually transmitted disease, there are also diseases that can come into a person's system via other means, not only via sex. So as in that case, you might go to the hospital tomorrow and you have hepatitis. but that doesn't mean you had it via sex. You had it via sharing Shobbs. So that is what I was saying, that some of these diseases can be transmitted to the next person via other means and not just solely through the sexual means. But why most of these diseases are classified under sexually transmitted infection or disease is that the bulk of the transmission, the majority of how it is passed is via sex. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. I understand it better now. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a question for Nurse Akpan so we can end the meeting?
Okay, please, let me say something. There is something that skipped my mind while I was talking about the prevention. This one is basically on a very specific disease by virtue of what I do. As it pertains to HIV, aside from condom use, abstinence, and being faithful to a partner, we have a drugs that prevents HIV, 90% effectiveness. It's called pre-exposure prophylaxis for HIV, and you take it, and you take it, and after 7 days of taking it consistently, even if you've been exposed, as you have unprotected sex with someone that has HIV, you will not get the HIV virus. That doesn't mean you might not get other viruses or other diseases, but for the HIV impact, you won't get HIV. Okay. And there are we also have an hour we call the post-exposure prophylaxis, in which you take, after you've been exposed to the HIV virus, you have a window of 72 hours to start taking the drugs, and it will ensure that the virus does not get hold of your body and does not manifest. So these drugs are actually free, completely free. I might not know about other states.
Okay.
But the state in which the program I'm working on is implementing, like I told at the beginning of this program, in Akwa Ibom State, River, Niger State, Adamawa, and Taraba. Okay. Those drugs are available and they are completely free. And if there's anyone on this call and you might want to know about the drugs, maybe I could, even if it's not in my location, I could, with the resources I have, check in other locations if it's possible for you to get it.
Okay, so Nurse Akpan, you made mention of something that's if you know you've been exposed to someone that has HIV. So how do you want to know if the person has HIV and you just have unprotected sex with the person? So how then would the person just think, this person, because they don't write it on the forehead that this person has HIV or he doesn't have HIV.
Okay, things happen. Working in the field, I've seen a whole lot of things happen. Okay. It's not okay. I'll come down to the sex part, but this side is actually for people like health. Most of us are health workers, nurses. Needle pricks. You might be taking care of a client that is reactive. Needle pricks. Okay. Midwives who oversee delivery and the rest of the things. And it's quite possible that you had sex with someone this night and the next night, somewhere down the line, you see a test result or you see the person taking his or her drugs and everything, and it's reactive. So even if it's not sure that this person actually has the virus, but to be on the safe side, even if you are not sure, to be on the safe side.
So it's better somebody just use the drug. All right. So yes, Elizabeth, I have a question. Elizabeth, can you unmute your mic? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I decided to on my video so you can get to see my face. Okay. So back to what Nurse Akwaowo said concerning PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis. There are candidates that are eligible for these drugs you get. So if somebody is consistently walking to your facility to ask you for PrEP, the one that we know as post-exposure prophylaxis, probably this person has been repeatedly. So this person is a right candidate for PrEP. It's advisable for you to place this patient or be this client on PrEP. Then if somebody is no longer prone to having HIV, the reasons why we are having this PrEP is to prevent people that doesn't know their partner status from contacting this HIV. So if the person decides along the line and he wants to stop taking this PrEP, the person has to take it for extra 28 days before the person has to stop this PrEP. So that's just what I wanted to add. But there's some eligibility criteria for us to actually place somebody on this PrEP, which is one, the person has to be HIV negative first, because we don't give PrEP to people that are HIV positive. The person has to be HIV negative. Then in other countries, since we cannot afford creatinine clearance here in Nigeria, so we do urinalysis. In this urinalysis, we check for protein. That's proteinuria, protein in urine. So if this person doesn't have protein in urine, we enroll the person on PrEP. Okay, so those are just the few eligibility criteria I can actually remember before actually pressing somebody on PrEP.
All right, thank you so much for the contribution. Thank you so, Nurse Akpan. Thank you so much for your time, and for everybody that joined. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for listening to the end of this episode. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you. Like, seriously, thank you. And please do not forget to like, share, and also drop a review on this podcast. It will go a long way for me. So thank you for listening to the end. I also want to say that if you have any topic in mind that you want me to discuss about, or you have any contribution, please don't forget to drop a voice note for me on this episode, or you send a direct message to me. And please don't forget to follow us on all the social media platforms at Sarah Shobbs, and on LinkedIn it is Sarah Shobola. Thank you for joining me. Do have a wonderful week and a wonderful day. Bye.